the legend of Dai Viet's 3 victories over the Mongol Empire. In the 13th century, the earth trembled beneath the hooves of the greatest empire the world had ever known, the Mongols. They had swallowed entire continents, from China to Russia, from the Middle East to the edge of Europe. Everywhere their name struck terror. And yet, in the far south, there was a small land where people refused to bow. That land was Dai Viet. The first invasion, 258, the Mongol Yuan forces stormed in with their fearsome cavalry. King Trun Tai Tung and his generals withdrew, avoiding the full strike while waiting for the perfect moment. When the enemy grew exhausted, trapped in the humid climate, starving and weary, the Vietnamese struck back like lightning. For the first time in history, Mongol horsemen were forced to flee this land. The second invasion, 1285, Kublai Khan unleashed a massive army, seemingly unstoppable. But the great hero Trun Hung Dao rose and called upon his people. If the enemy comes, let us fight to the very end. The entire nation became an unbreakable fortress. Villages were emptied, food stores removed, leaving the invaders to starve. Guerrilla raids and ambushes thundered like storms. At last, the mighty Mongol army collapsed, fleeing in chaos. The third invasion, 1287 to 1288, the Mongols returned, fiercer than ever. But this time, Trun Hung Dao had prepared a masterstroke. At the Bakdang River, beneath the rising tide, thousands of sharpened wooden stakes lay hidden. When the waters fell, the Mongol fleet became trapped, and one by one their ships exploded in fire and arrows. It was a shattering defeat, shaking even the strongest empire on earth. Humiliated, the Mongols never returned to Dai Viet. The spirit of the 1258 battle. In the winter of 1257, the Mongol Yuan cavalry thundered down from the north. Under the banner of General Uriyanghatai, the Iron Horsemen who had terrified all of Eurasia roared onto the borders of Dai Viet. They believed that with a single strike, this small kingdom would collapse, just as so many nations before it had fallen. But Dai Viet was not a land to be subdued so easily. King Trun Tai Tung and his generals knew that facing the Mongol cavalry head-on was suicide. Instead, they chose a strategic retreat, fighting while withdrawing, drawing the enemy deeper into a land of sweltering heat, winding rivers, and deadly disease. Day by day, the proud Mongol warriors began to falter. Supplies ran out, the suffocating climate broke their strength, horses fell, and soldiers withered. In their eyes, this was no longer a battlefield. It had become a colossal trap. And then, the moment to strike arrived. As the enemy staggered within Thang Long, suddenly from all directions, war drums thundered like storms. The Dai Viet army, under the command of Trun Tai Tung, surged forward. Battle cries shook the heavens. Swords and spears flashed in the smoke and dust. The horsemen who once dominated the steppes now found themselves lost in a land of rivers and marshes. They were cut off, surrounded, and cut down, unit after unit collapsing in chaos. The invincible empire had tasted its first bitter defeat on the soil of the south. In January 1258, Uriyanghatai was forced to retreat. The Mongol Yuan cavalry galloped north in disgrace, leaving behind a battlefield drenched in shame. This victory did more than preserve Dai Viet's independence. It resounded like a declaration to the world. This nation may be small, but its spirit will never bow. The second battle, 1285 Trun Hung Dao and the Oath of No Surrender. The summer of 1285, the skies of the south blazed with the fire of war. From the north, Kublai Khan, the mighty great Khan of the Mongols, sent forth a colossal force. Over 500,000 Mongol Yuan soldiers, bolstered by conscripts from conquered lands. The storm of iron horsemen swept down into Dai Viet, seemingly unstoppable. The nation trembled in peril. But from within the chaos, a hero arose, Trun Hung Dao. At the riverbank, he raised his sword high, his voice ringing to soldiers and common folk alike. If the enemy comes, fight with me to the end. If any man fears death, let him strike off my head first. His vow cracked across the land like thunder, and the people answered as one. Villages were emptied, homes and food moved away, leaving behind only empty houses and barren fields to starve the invaders. The people of Dai Viet became like shadows, ambushing by day, raiding by night. Each clash struck like lightning, leaving the enemy shaken and terrified. The deeper the Mongol Yuan army advanced, the more they sank into despair. Arrogance turned to panic. Their massive columns were cut apart, hunted through every mountain and every river. At last, in the heart of the Red River Delta, the great battles erupted. From every side, Dai Viet's forces surged like a tidal wave. The cry of "Sat That! Kill the Mongol invaders!" rolled like thunder across the plains. Enemy formations collapsed. Generals fled. The ground was littered with the fallen. By June 1285, the great Mongol Yuan host was broken. Their dream of southern conquest lay in ruins, and they fled northward in disgrace. Once again, Dai Viet stood unshaken, not by military might alone, but by the unity of its people, a fortress no empire could conquer. The third battle, in 1287 to 1288, the epic of the Bakdang River. In 1287, after two crushing defeats, the Mongol Yuan Empire still refused to abandon its ambition. In his fury, Kublai Khan unleashed the greatest invasion yet. Armies on land and fleets on water swept down like a storm, carrying the will to crush Dai Viet once and for all. But this land was ready, and at the heart of the storm stood the familiar hero, Prince Chun Hungdao. He knew one decisive battle could end the Northern Empire's dream of domination. The colossal trap, Chun Hungdao lured the Yuan forces deep inside the country. The enemy believed Dai Viet exhausted and pressed forward in arrogance. Yet on the waters of the Bakdang River, a vast trap of heaven and earth lay waiting. Beneath the rushing tide, thousands of sharpened iron-tipped stakes had been driven into the riverbed, silent, hidden beneath the waves. A whole battlefield of death lay concealed beneath the surface, the fiery epic. On April 8, 1288, the mighty Yuan fleet surged into the river's mouth. At first, they roared with confidence, certain of victory. But then, the tide receded, the water dropped, and from the river's depths, the sharp stakes rose, tearing through ship after ship. From both banks, Dai Viet's warriors struck like a storm. War drums thundered across the land, arrows rained, fire blazed, swords flashed. The cry of "Sat That! Slay the invaders!" shook the heavens. Mongol ships splintered against the stakes, burning in seas of flame. Soldiers screamed, drowned, or were cut down. Chaos consumed the fleet. The once mighty navy that had ruled the oceans was buried beneath the waves of the Bakdang. The fateful victory news raced north. The Yuan army was annihilated. Kublai Khan was stunned, his invincible host broken by a small nation's will. From that day forth, the hooves of the Mongol horsemen would never again touch the soil of Dai Viet. The Bakdang River became eternal, a symbol of defiance and triumph. The eternal spirit, 3 invasions, 3 defeats. Dai Viet, a small yet indomitable nation, achieved what the world thought impossible, defeating the mighty Mongol Yuan Empire, the most powerful force in history. The Bakdang River, together with those glorious victories, became an immortal epic of the Vietnamese people. And that message still echoes through the ages. No enemy is too great when the will of the people is united and the spirit of sacrifice shines bright. Thank you for watching until the end. If you enjoyed the stories from Vietnamese Storytell, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you won't miss our upcoming tales. See you in the next video.